This is now my 4th time recording this because of technical difficulties, so I apologize in advance for any frustration or lackluster enthusiasm. It's for that reason. Welcome to the Sword and Pen Reflections. This is my casual alternative to the more formal channel, The Sword and the Pen, link up there. For this, I am discussing episode 4 of season 1, Shadow and Bone, and its corresponding chapters 9 through 13. So if you're joining us for the first time, I have never read the book or seen the film, show, until now, and I am reading and watching simultaneously. In this case, I watched episode 4 first, and then I read the corresponding chapters. And as an editor, I am explaining some of the differences between the two and where it either strengthens and enhances or if it weakens the story or the characters in any kind of way. So we're going to look at Alina's story first, her arc. In this episode, we see her conflict externalized more than in the novel once again. So in the novel, it is in her head that there's this pressure on her to succeed. We read about her obsessing over, I just wonder where Mal is, and, does he even care about me? No, he doesn't. And, I have to just do my own thing, and everybody's going to give up on me. It's all very much in her head. But in the show, we're seeing that it is externalized. We are seeing that characters are putting this pressure on her rather than her just manifesting it from within. We do see it a little bit in the book, but not nearly like we see it in the show. And we also see her voicing her fears a little bit more. And it's creating great interactions and conflict between her and other characters. So we saw her first get the my family calls it the stink eye, or people with a hairy eyeball call it that too, where you kind of squint at somebody and I don't like you. We saw it from Ivan in the previous episode, and we see it again now. Actually, no, we didn't see the stink eye in the previous episode, but we did in this one. But anyway, it's Ivan. So he has reminded her that Grisha are dying because you are not training fast enough and destroying the fold so that we don't have to be at war. Then we see Bagra straight up say to her, how many more Ravka children have to be turned into orphans because you are afraid of the truth that, you should believe in yourself. You need to rely on yourself. You need to just know that you are the one and you have to do this. And so we're getting the pressure on her from there. And then we also have a scene where she is, it's actually 2 scenes, but there's the first scene is when she's at the wishing well with General Kerrigan. And she tells him that she feels this way. She goes, people are going to hate me just like they hate the black heretic if I fail. If I fail to destroy the Shadowfold, I will be the new black heretic. And then that's used, that externalization is used as a means of bringing her closer. I'm talking about from the writer's perspective, to the Black General, to General Kerrigan, Alexander. So that scene in particular, this is a very tropey sort of a scene for a romance, especially a dark, mysterious character in love with somebody else or vice versa, whatever. You have one character take another character to their secret spot, and because I showed you my secret spot and I told you about some tragic, vulnerable past, now you want to support me more. But that's not exactly what happened here, and I was really glad that they didn't do it. It still felt a little tropey, but it wasn't too bad. So he explains, the usual, this is my secret spot. I would run here when I was a kid because I knew that everyone hated me for what my ancestor did. And instead of at the end, her going, oh, poor you, and I'm here to support you, he was using this to say, I know what you're feeling. I know what it's like to have everybody hating you and putting all this pressure on you. And so I just want you to know I will be by your side. I won't abandon you. I'm in this with you. You're not alone. And then there was a nice sort of mirroring scene later. And a mirroring scene is where you have a similar thing happen at a second time or third time or whatever. You have a similar scene where the characters are going through something just like they were before, but something about it is different. So later we see Alina, who can't sleep, goes into General Kerrigan's uh, office attachment to his bedroom, and he's up pacing, and he has sort of a breakdown where he's explaining to her that we are getting so weak, like our country is getting so weak because all of our enemies are all around us and I can't destroy the fold, and I've been doing this alone and I just feel the walls closing in and you see the room get darker. She takes his hand and suddenly she creates light and tells him, "You are not alone anymore." Kind of saying the same thing that he said to her earlier, saying, "I am here with you now." And then that is, I believe, something that triggers in her a sudden realization that she does need to rely on herself more. So throughout this episode, we see her saying again and again that she's, I'll just wait for Mal to come, hopefully to the palace, and he'll know what to say to encourage me and make me feel better, and then things will be great. But after this scene with General Kerrigan, and the actor did a really good job of making him seem more human. I don't know if this was on the part of the script writers or if this was the actor or if it was the director, who knows. But he seems far more human in that last scene. He's like crying even, or almost crying. And this scene does happen in the book, but it didn't impact me as much, I think, because I didn't feel that it was built up to in the same way that it was here. And I think because they had more interactions with the General Kerrigan in a non on a stage sort of situation, their little date by the wishing well, and that felt a little bit more private, so he was able to be more vulnerable. And then here again, he didn't expect her to come in, and you know this because when she leaves, he locks the door afterwards. But anyway, so what I was getting at was that it was a switcheroo, sort of. She's decided, I'm going to be supporting you, and then immediately after that, she goes to Baghra and shows that she can create light at will. She's sort of starting to believe in herself and realize, I can't rely on other people. Like, she suddenly feels not a pressure on her, but so much as people need me and I want to help them. Like, she wants to help the general. She wants him to not feel alone. So I liked that. That was very good. It's a bit more, it's a bit more advanced than just her deciding to believe in yourself and go. Like, she has a reason why she needs to believe in herself. There's so many little things about this episode to talk about that I have to skip over. But I'm going to do my best not to skip over too much. But I do think that this decision to humanize the Black General was really good. So in the show, unless I missed it, let me know in the comments if I missed it, but I went back and I looked for it in the show and I couldn't find it anywhere. Did they explain that the Black General is like 125 years old? Because I didn't see it. But in the book, it's like one of the first things that you learn about him is that he's 100 and I think it was 125. Alina knows it, and she's like, I heard that you're way older, how old are you? And then he goes 125, and I think she like almost spits out her soup or something, and like so surprised. If he's actually supposed to be old, I think it was a good idea not to expose that, because in my opinion, any adult looks at that situation and goes, so what is he, some sort of pedophile? if there's supposed to be romantic interest here, doesn't care if you look young. I mean, it's still the same thing. It would be like a 90-year-old man being in love with like a teenage girl. It's weird. So I'm glad that they decided not to expose that. I'm wondering how they're going to deal with it going forward. If it's going to hit me the way it usually does when I read this sort of thing, where I go, that's gross. But anyway, we'll see. Another thing actually that it was in the book, but not in the show, is that Baghra is an amplifier. I don't know why the show hasn't exposed this yet, but I'm curious to see where that goes. I'm not going to go too much into that. I'm just going to say that they have, in the book, she immediately knows that Baghra is an amplifier, but in the show, we don't even see that Baghra has any Grisha power. And actually, in the book, there is a scene where Baghra and the general Alina catches them at the end of an argument of some kind. And that was supposed to be the humanizing moment, or one of them, where Alina goes like, wow, I never saw anybody, get you flustered before. Like, clearly Baghra has some sort of a psychological superiority over you because, and he says, well, yeah, she was my teacher or something like that. That has not happened here. I don't think we've actually seen Baghra and the general together in any scene at all. But so from the book, I'm actually more curious about what their relationship is. So that is something that's lost in the show. I'm not really connecting Baghra and the Black General in the show. To me, they're just separate. I mean, he says that she was his teacher, but I don't know. I don't know if that was said in the book. Was it said that he's a teacher? It was definitely in the show. But if she was his teacher, and he's 125 years old, I mean, she's really old too. So anyway, we'll come back to that if it comes up again. If it doesn't, we'll come back to it again too, because then I'll be like, why didn't that come to fruition? Why didn't we see something from them that? But let's move on to Mal. At this point in the show, although not a whole lot happened with Mal, I just like his character a lot. He didn't go through a whole lot, but he's just an honorable character. He's determined to get back to Alina. We find out through the flashback that he has done this before, that she has been off in trouble. She was in the prison cell. And so he went and defended her. She got in a fight with the quartermaster because he insulted her or called her a name. And so he goes to the bar and like, "Are you the quartermaster?" "Yeah," and smashes a bottle over his head. No discussion, just that. And then he's put in jail. So that way he can be beside her, and now they have matching scars. But then he spends this whole episode tracking down the elk, the Moritzova's stag, because he wants to get back to her. And he saw the picture of the elk in the sort of wanted flyer that they found, or that their boss showed him, was her drawing. And so he's like, if I find the stag, then I can go and, it'll be my way to get back to Alina. So he's a very likable character in this situation. In the book, since I know nothing about what he's doing or what he's doing, what his life is, I don't care about him. And I'm supposed to go for the Black General in the book. And unfortunately, because the Black General is depicted as being this dark and mysterious character, his humanization is more subtle in the book. And I wouldn't say more subtle in a good way. It's more like we don't see that he's human as much. We see it's like left up to our interpretation, and I'm just not feeling it. I wasn't necessarily stoked about her going with the Black General. I just thought that, he's clearly better than Mal, but that doesn't mean much because Mal was not a great character in the opening chapters of Shadow and Bone, the book. In the show, however, I'm conflicted about the two. I'm like, I totally see how the Black General he has this huge amount of responsibility, and he has immediately stepped forward to support her, and he is being vulnerable with her and showing like, I'm going to rely on you and you're going to rely on me. And that's actually what a marriage is. So I'm like, that's a good partnership. But I like that we see that Mal has just been the silent supporter all this time. So I'm more conflicted. I'm like, okay, so Mal's a great, good person, and he's really fought to be with Alina. He just hasn't admitted to her or exposed his feelings for her, and she hasn't exposed her. It's one of those, if they just talked, then things would be so much better, which is kind of a YA romance thing. But yeah, as far as people are concerned, it would be tough for me to decide between the two of them which one I'm going for. So I felt like they've done a good job of making both of these characters very likable at this point. Dubrov and Mikhail. I thought it was brilliant that they died. I mean, I'm not saying I was for it. I'm just saying, wow, I was not expecting them to be killed off in such a horrible way after being such good, loyal friends. And I loved that Mal was guilty about it, and he felt terrible. You could see him. The actor did a great job of crying over their bodies and saying, I'm so sorry, like, because he recognized that they were only there and dead because they were supporting him as good friends. So I liked that a lot. Moving on to the Nina story. So this is not in the book so far. I know that it's in Six of Crows, but it's not the story. I was told that this is like the backstory. I'm still conflicted about this Nina character. So her jailer is offering her a kindness, obviously with a purpose. He wants information out of her. But when she refuses to give it, he still gives her the food, and then she spits it in his face. He's a very proud person, just the little that we've seen, because he has assumptions about Grisha and what she's like. You're a witch, you're a bad person or whatever. And she's like, I'm bad. You're the one who's, captured me and put me in chains, and now I'm going to go off to trial where it's not a trial. I'm going to be found guilty no matter what. She's not she's not demonstrating anything, in my opinion, that counters what his opinion of Grisha would be. And I'm sort of, to me, it seems very highly unlikely that a proud person who believes that they are right would have their mind so easily changed by somebody who is also proud and insulting them and kind of doing similar things to what he thought. She's basically just saying, like, Grisha are good. We can slow your heart and, calm you down when you're in pain and, all the good things that Grisha can do. But it's like, this is kind of why tell is not better than show. She is telling him that they can do good things, but she's not really demonstrating herself as being a good person. And I know that he isn't either, but I'm just saying that two people who think that they're both right and are opposed like this, it's highly unlikely that one of them is going to suddenly, unless he's just not a very strong-willed person, break down and be like, oh, maybe you are right. What I would have maybe liked to have seen is that she is far more vulnerable and less fiery, and seems more meek and smaller than what he always thought Grisha were. And now he's kind of going like, I thought that they were monsters, but this is clearly not a monster. And instead, I'm seeing something completely different. So I'm not entirely comfortable with how this is going, because clearly this is going towards romance. I mean, it looks like it if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Yeah, this is going to turn into a romance, and I'm just not seeing his change in heart happening in a realistic way like this. But okay, we'll go along for it and see how it turns out. Final note is for the crows. Again, I'm really enjoying this whole thing, but I gotta say, the last two, this episode and the previous one, were not as intriguing to me as the first two episodes. And I wish I could explain why. I think maybe it's just because I'm starting to notice a few flaws in the story. And they're not big flaws, but they're just like, whatever. So their heist, the best thing that you can do in a heist is, if you've explained how it's supposed to go, and then they go off and do the heist, you want that their plans to go awry. If you've explained how it's supposed to go, then show that it doesn't go the way it's supposed to go. And that's exactly what happens. So they did a good job of making sure that their heist goes wrong, but it's very easily fixed. It doesn't ruin their plans. It doesn't make them have to go and do something else. They quickly get out of it by doing a thing that in the beginning we were told you cannot do. And I think that's why I didn't like this so much. So Jesper is told by Kaz, you cannot shoot because we can't have, all the police show up while we're trying to sneak in and sneak out. If all the police and stuff show up, we're dead because we can't fight our way past that. And how do they get out of this situation? Inej is trapped in this archives. Jesper shoots the gun at the lock. But he doesn't, I get it, he does it with the clock. But what they should have done is maybe set this up in some way so that we can anticipate that that clock is there. So you make this a puzzle that we could see, we knew that this would be a way out. We could have known that this was a way out too if we had been paying attention. So maybe at one point, Kaz and the others are hanging around in that square outside of the archives, and they hear the bell go off and it makes Jesper jump or something. And then that's while they're planning, how they're going to get in. Then when Inej gets in there and she's trapped, and Kaz is like trying to brainstorm, how do I get her out of here? Like, I can't use my gun. Maybe they had coordinated it so that it would happen right when there's like a changing of the guard, like they determined that the bell tolls at this time and that's when the changing of the guard is going to happen. And so he could be sitting there going, what do I do? And then remember that Kaz said, you have to do this when the guard is going to change because of, and figure out some reason why it has to happen then. And then he remembers that the bell made him jump. It was so loud. And he goes, oh wait, I can shoot then. And then he shoots the lock and that lets them out. That's what I would like to have seen. But it was not the worst way to progress with this story. So there you have it. Anyway, I'm still enjoying the show a lot. I still actually think that I am enjoying the show more than the book at this point. My excitement and interest in the show has slightly wavered from the first two episodes, but I wouldn't say it's gone down a whole lot. because I am curious about where they're going to take these characters. And I also want to see how the heck they're going to break Alina out of the little palace, because it sounds like they have, it's impossible how we're going to get in or get out. Okay, if there's, only one way to get in, and that's with people who are invited, how are you going to get out? With the people who are invited out? So they got to get her out without people noticing that she's missing, is what I'm guessing. But anyway, let me know what you think about this show. Are you enjoying it? Are you not enjoying it? Is there anything that I missed in this? Because it's tough for me to read these chapters and then watch the show, or watch the show and then the chapters, and remember everything as two separate things. And I almost feel like what I would prefer to do is read one all the way through and just keep bullet points of everything, and then watch, the show and also bullet points, and see which ones match up as being, oh, this was different. But anyway, I still think the quality of this show is very good. I'm so surprised that the show is not, I don't know, maybe it's doing better than I thought, but it's a very high quality production, and all the acting is pretty good. I mean, I have no complaints. It's doing very, very well. I'm surprised if more people aren't watching this. Anybody who enjoyed Twilight and all of that, I did not read Twilight, and I've seen the movies because I watched my mom and my sisters watched it, and so I've seen it through them. But if you liked that, this is definitely more mature, more well thought out story, I think. So let me know what you thought, and please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you're feeling really generous, maybe check out my Patreon or my Ko-fi. I do prefer Ko-fi because they do not take a percentage of anything that you give to creators, whereas Patreon does. They take at least 10%. And until next time, be good to yourself.